So, hello everyone, and welcome to today's Midlands IND Ambassador meeting. Just to introduce myself, my name is Becky Vine. I'm the Programme Manager for the Midlands Finance Academy, and I am covering the chairing of this meeting today. So normally the chair is Sarah Stansfield. She wasn't able to make the meeting today, but we wanted to still go ahead. And then Megan, who you probably all know from the ONF team, was going to chair, and then she had another meeting clash, which she had to go to this afternoon. So she's asked me to cover. So apologies that I'm your third rank chair, but I will do my best for today's meeting. I think we were expecting around 17 people, so it looks like we've got sort of roughly those numbers coming on. And in terms of apologies, we've had a number of apologies through, which, if it's all right, Becky, because there's quite a few, I think I'm just going to pop them in the chat. So I will do that now rather than kind of running through all of the list. But these are the apologies that we've had. And then obviously anyone say if they think anyone's missing from that, or if there's an apology there, but you are attending. The agenda and papers are on the meeting invite for today, so hopefully everyone has those, but just let us know if you don't. And we should be finishing by 2:30 at the latest. Hopefully, I'm hoping that we might be able to finish more like sort of 2:15, but we'll see how the meeting goes. So just moving on to number 2 on the agenda, actions from the last meeting. Becky, are you sort of taking us through these? Sorry, it's very confusing. 2 Beckys here.
I'm just going to share my screen. Can everyone see that, or do I need to zoom in a bit?
Yeah, I think that looks all right.
Cool. So they are all closed. It was mostly things that have passed, like the Breaking Diversity Barriers programme, places for the annual conference. And then we've circulated the up-to-date EDI action plan. And then there was an action for the ambassadors to read through the EDI action plan and review and feedback. Is that going to be in this meeting at some point, Becky?
I think that was just sort of to,
in general,
in general to get in touch with me.
Cool.
So you can probably close that off because that's just sort of an ongoing thing. But yeah, just to remind everyone that if you do have any thoughts on so this is the Finance Academy's EDI action plan, which we're kind of bringing to this group and asking for their support in helping us move things forward. And it's been attached in the papers. So just sort of a general ongoing thing that we're happy to take any thoughts and feedback on that. But just obviously you can contact myself directly.
Cool.
Yeah, it looks like everything else is closed.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So item number 3, refreshing the ambassador role. So I know this was something Megan was going to cover. She got you down for it, Becky. Are you covering this off? Okay.
Yes, I am. I'll share my screen again. So I prepared some slides, and most of the points taken from it are from a document all about the ambassador role, which I think most people have read, but it's just a refresher anyway. So I'm going to show where to find it. If you go onto the main ONF page and then go up to networks, and then inclusion and diversity ambassadors, and it's just the starter guide here. It's a really useful document. There's loads of stuff in it, so it's worth having a look. I'm just going to get my slides up now. So the basics, as you all know, you are expected to attend the quarterly regional meetings and take an active role. And then you're also expected to give updates and feedback at each of the meetings about the work you've been doing. And we do suggest meeting up in ICS groups in between the meetings because that really helps with those updates. And then we've got the benefits of being part of the network. The main ones being it improves patient care. When employees feel valued and included, they're much more likely to be engaged and committed to their work, which in turn improves patient outcomes. It also increases staff morale and retention, as employees who feel valued and supported are more likely to be satisfied with their jobs and less likely to leave. And this can also help reduce costs with recruitment and training. It also diversifies perspectives and innovation. When employees feel comfortable sharing their ideas, they're much more likely to contribute to creative problem solving and come up with new approaches. It also improves reputation, not just of the organisations, but the NHS as a whole. And a reputation for valuing diversity and inclusion can help attract and retain talented employees and demonstrate a commitment to providing equitable care to all patients. And then I may be preaching to the choir, but as an ambassador individually, increases your profile and network, helps you meet like-minded people. It means that you can be involved in making a positive change within NHS finance, and it gives you access to senior leaders across the region and opportunities to get involved in national meetings and events. And there are plenty of ways that you can gain support within your role. Senior leaders should, in theory, be supportive of the important work that you have been doing. And if they aren't, then you can bring this up in regional meetings and you can get support from the chair of your regional meetings. We also suggest creating an I&D champions network. So that would be creating a network of people around you who can champion EDI alongside you. And this can be done by asking for volunteers in your team meetings. And having this network around you on a more local level means that the work can be shared and more focused on your own organisation. And then you can feed that back into the regional meetings as well. And your organisation's HR teams will already be doing a lot of work on EDI, so it is worth linking in with them and supporting each other. These are the people that can help you out with providing valuable data and training. And then the way that the network is set up ensures that you are always supported within your role, both by your chair and your peers, which is why we have the regional meetings and why we encourage the meeting in your ICS groups in between meetings. And as I mentioned, all of the chairs of the regional networks are in finance director roles. So you do have some seniority behind you, which means that your work is always being backed up. And then many of you will have already done this, but for any newcomers or as a reminder, there's a few things you can do to get started, which includes a bit of research, reading through the I&D resource pack, completing the checklist in the I&D resource pack, reading through the National EDI Action Plan and seeing where your organisation is already. Connecting with already established networks within your organisation, and then deciding on an action plan, deciding your objectives and goals and breaking them down so they are smaller and more manageable. And then I've put the checklist here because there are loads of really good ideas on there, so it's definitely worth having a look at that one. And then some quick wins that you can do. Use of pronouns in email signatures and in meeting introductions, making sure your recruitment process is inclusive, with diverse panel training and making sure your job advertisements are accessible and inclusive. We've also got a recruitment guide, which is really useful. Another really quick and easy one is inclusive forms by listing characteristics alphabetically and ensuring as many characteristics are covered as possible with an option to add them in if they're not there. And then learning how to have difficult conversations, even when they're uncomfortable. We've got a guide on race, and we've also got an event somewhere which was about having challenging conversations. So I'll dig that one out as well. And then I've just got some more examples here that take a bit more time but are worth doing. So you could have a newsletter which shows the EDI across your trust and within the NHS, wellbeing tips, changing the colours on the RAG rating so that it's more accessible for colour blindness, implementing schemes such as the Rainbow Badge scheme, Access Accountancy. And then lastly, it's just all about the resources that we have. So on the ONF website, we've got blog posts and guides. Some of the guides that I already mentioned, I've just put the links in here. We've got the Virtual Finance Network, where you should already be members of it, and you can get support from each other and share resources and ideas. And then we also run the finance inclusion conferences twice a year. The most recent one was on disabilities and is available to watch back on our YouTube channel. And then the next one will be in May or June, and the topic depends on your feedback and what you would like next. And that is everything from me.
Thanks, Becky. So that seemed like a helpful sort of refresher of what the role's about and the sort of things that you can be doing in it and the support that's available. Just want to take a moment in case anyone has any sort of feedback for Becky or any questions following that. Paul.
Yeah, it's very helpful, but it also makes me feel kind of embarrassed because I'm not doing very much, if I'm honest. Just to be honest with you all, I mean, so I guess it's just we need to think about how we actually could enact this on the ground. And I mean, it's all there, as you say. That helpfully shows that it's all there. It's all there online, and we can draw it all down. But we need that sort of drive on the ground, don't we? Really. So I don't know if there is anyone doing this really well. So I don't think I am.
Anyone want to talk about how they're doing it really well? I think I'm sure a lot of people would express the same, Paul. It's I recognise a lot of familiar faces here from a multitude of different roles. So a lot of you, I think, are value makers, and you are involved in the academy, and you are doing the I&D ambassador role. And it's wonderful that you're obviously the sort of people who contribute in all these different ways. But I imagine on top of the day job, it can be very challenging to find the headspace and the time and feel like you're actually getting stuff done. I'm going to go to Robert and then to Emma. Robert?
It was just to reflect on what Paul said. We're trying to do it. I guess the issue that we have, and that is the practical issue, is we have a HR team, we have an EDI team, we've got various other NHS England initiatives, etc. And it's how do you actually tie them all together? Because some of them, they don't conflict, but they don't quite match up, all the various initiatives that are going on, and trying to engage with HR and our EDI team about, well, this is what's coming through from the finance team, and it's not quite the same as is coming down from their roots. There seems to be, everyone's talking about the same stuff, but everyone's got a slightly different approach, and it's, we as a finance team are led more by what our HR team and our board tell us we have to do than by necessarily what is coming down through the EDI champion route. And it's, I guess it's a bit of a plea really for NHS England colleagues to actually make these things link up a lot more, so they're all saying exactly the same thing and all the messages are exactly the same through.
Yeah. I don't know, Becky, if that's an action we can take back to sort of ONF in a kind of a role as your national position and your access to NHSE, because I've heard a similar thing, Robert, and not just for EDI but for different areas, on our Finance Academy board meetings where they're saying we're getting mixed messages coming down from the different channels, and can we feed back to NHSE on kind of making this consistent. So I don't know if there's influence that ONF can have there, so if we can note that down, Becky. Emma?
Where I work in Derbyshire ICB, we have two groups. One is called the OI group, which is Organisational Effective Improvement, which is across all departments. And then the other is the DIN network, Diversity Inclusion Network. So I've been to both, and from the HFMA One Inclusion Academy conference 2 weeks ago, if I remember rightly, I took the action points from there and I've used that to influence the dialogue, and I'm hoping we're looking at setting a group up across it, but it not only be finance. So we're influencing the direction of talk there. But I would like to get a copy of what, if you could send me the link of what you've just been through, like the recruitment, etc. I can then use that to drive it forward more, because we spoke about autism and about diabetes and how we can help people. So it's just getting those conversations started.
Yeah, absolutely. Becky, I presume you'll share those slides that you
Yeah, I
just
will,
presented to this group after the meeting in some form. And Emma, that sounds like a really positive thing that you've started working on. So
Thank you.
perhaps
It's early days
I
though.
was about to say it sounds like early days, but maybe when it's slightly less early days, you know, you could share sort of with this group how it's progressing and what you're doing, and others might be able to look at doing something similar.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? No, doesn't look like it. Okay, so going to move on to 4.1 on the agenda, which is apologies, a bit of me talking, and then we'll have a chance to hear from some others. So for anyone who was on the last I&D ambassadors meeting, that was the first one where myself and my colleague Meg sort of came along and said, under the Midlands Finance Academy, you know, one of our 4 key work streams is equality, diversity and inclusion. And we didn't want to set up a separate working group to, you know, be looking at very similar things that you guys are talking about here, and essentially trying to do the same thing but in a separate group. So we sort of asked if we could kind of pair up with the I&D ambassadors in the Midlands to look at our action plan, and without putting too much workload on you guys, you know, ask for your sort of feedback and help for us in progressing that. So it was agreed with Sarah that we could kind of use these agendas to take a particular part of our action plan and do a little bit of a deep dive on it. So that is the item that we're looking at today. So we have this sort of a section on the action plan, but what we want to do is kind of set out our plans for a sort of research piece and report looking at recruitment and retention in terms of EDI, and get any of your kind of initial thoughts and feedback. And then we've got some time on the agenda to also hear from yourselves in terms of what your organisations might be doing in the areas of sort of recruitment and retention. And then the plan is to take a research spec to the Finance Academy board, which is meeting on the 8th of January for kind of approval to go ahead with this piece of work. And essentially, we want to very much model it on the Southwest Finance Academy did a research piece and a report, which has been included in the papers. So hopefully people have a chance to have a look at that either already or after the meeting today. But just very sort of briefly, the Southwest report, they covered, so they did a review of kind of relevant documents, which was sort of mainly the ONF EDI action plan and resource pack. They did a desktop review of job descriptions from a sample. I think they had around 60 from the region. They conducted one-to-one interviews with FDs and also with HR directors, and they ran focus groups, which included sort of a range of bands and roles, and they ensured that the interviews and the focus groups covered all of the systems in their region. And they also did a review of the responses to the finance staff attitude survey for their region, and then they wrote that up in the report that we've included for you guys to have a look at, and kind of produce conclusions and recommendations for the region from that. So what we are proposing to do is to essentially follow a very similar method as the Southwest, with some slight suggested adjustments, which I will run through now. So as well as the One NHS Finance EDI action plan, we also want to include, we want to review the One NHS Finance promotion, recruitment and retention strategy, which you may have heard about but won't have seen yet because it hasn't been published. So this is still being looked at in draft format with the kind of national team at ONF and being reviewed by the FLC. But I understand it is intended to be published in May 2024. So we want to make sure that we wait until that's published so that we can review that and link to that strategy as well. And as well as the staff attitude survey, we want to review the EDI census statistics for the Midlands. And we also want to, so the statistics for the staff attitude survey that the South West looked at were from 2022. So both the census and the staff attitude survey will be done again in 2024. So we want to use that data so that it's the most kind of up to date and relevant for the research. We want to try and include perhaps some more good practice examples. So like the South West report have in their kind of Appendix 1, they pulled out some kind of good practice from the region and shared it. We want to try and kind of do a bit more of that in the Midlands piece. And we're thinking about perhaps publishing the report alongside a slide deck, which tries to sort of take the report and it makes the information a little bit more visual and digestible, so we can use that to quite easily sort of share it with groups and with the Academy Board and with the Midlands finance directors, as well as the more detailed report. And lastly, we are keen to work with a sort of a little bit more of a focused subgroup of I&D ambassadors from the Midlands, specifically on the conclusion and the recommendations part of the report. So the way the South West did this is they commissioned the HFMA research and development team to essentially kind of carry out this research piece for them. We're planning on doing this more kind of in-house with the Academy, but we want to work with I&D ambassadors, a range of people, but at least with one finance director. Not to, we will do the legwork of all of the interviews and the focus groups and pulling together the information, but it's that end bit, what are the conclusions or what are we recommending? We don't want that just to come from the Academy, we want that to come from people on the ground. So we want to work with a subgroup of I&D ambassadors on that kind of last bit of the report. And then in terms of timings, sort of when the South West did this, they said the process took about 8 months, just in terms of being able to organise interviews and focus groups and get things in people's diaries, and then put all the information together and write it up. So we're looking at that, but we also, like I mentioned before, we want to make sure we use the most recent census and staff attitudes data. So I think the 2024 should hopefully be published around autumn time. And as I mentioned, the promotion, recruitment and retention strategy that ONF are working on is going to be published in May. So we plan to take a research spec to the board and start working on this, hopefully, relatively early in the new year, but it may be more towards the end of next year, possibly even early 2025, when we're actually able to publish this, just in terms of kind of being able to use the most recent data and making sure that we've got all the relevant reports to link to. So that's a quick summary of what we're planning on doing for this kind of research piece and report in the Academy. So just want to open it up for any thoughts or feedback from anyone. Do we think it's a good thing for us to do? Worthwhile? Yeah, a couple of nods. Robert?
I did read the report, and it goes back to my other point. One of the things that the report talked about was there was, for example, some confusion as to what exactly the targets were. So if I just talk about my own trust, we know that there are targets around the numbers of women at 8A and above, which we meet. There are targets for race equality, which we don't meet, but then that goes back to, as a county, we have a 3 and 4% kind of diversity rate. So that's quite difficult, and we're right next to Birmingham, so people don't tend to travel out to us. So I guess I'm saying that there are so many metrics out there, and they all kind of say slightly different things. So the same workforce race equality report also says that people of different ethnicities have an equal chance to get a job with us, which is great news. But then we're listed as a bright red because our ethnic mix is so not diverse as a trust. So those are two messages from the same report that kind of don't really
Match up.
And one of the other comments in the report was that actually I think it was the Northwest was less diverse. I can't remember if it's Northwest or the Northeast was less diverse than the Southwest. But treating the Southwest or even the Northeast or the Northwest as just one monolith doesn't really help either. And I think we've had this discussion on this group before. My trust covers Herefordshire and Worcestershire, which has a relatively small population. And as I said, we've got a 3-4% diversity rate. I think people in Staffordshire have said similar, people in Lincolnshire have said similar. Well, if you spoke to someone in Birmingham or Coventry or Warwickshire, their general population diversity is so significantly different to ours. And therefore, achieving some of those diversity targets is just naturally easier without having to do that much work because the pool is in itself much more diverse to start with.
Yeah.
So I think all I'm saying is that we need to think about what are the metrics that we actually think are important and how do we treat those metrics across the Midlands region when the Midlands region in itself is diverse
so
between
diverse,
very rural to very urban, and just having one set of outcomes that say the Midlands is good or bad isn't terribly helpful, kind of across the Midlands. I think that's the main point which was what I was kind of referring to earlier as well.
Yeah, I know we spoke about this on the last meeting, didn't we? And I think it's especially the case for the Midlands, isn't it? How different the makeup of the populations are when you even just move from county to county. So I think just to try and sort of think about what we're saying there, Robert. So perhaps it is around looking at those overall metrics and, like you say, sort of trying to decide which ones are important or which ones are the sort of things that we want to measure.
Which sources you use. I think one of the comments in the paper was that people were very confused about what the target was, and that's why I refer back to in NHS England talk about one set of metrics, and then we've been talking about local populations, and local populations versus the NHSE target is massively different, and that's why the workforce race equality report is also in some respects quite not meaningless, but it's not necessarily as meaningful for us to have a red because we can't recruit ethnic people when in fact we do. Our biggest ethnic group are Eastern Europeans, but because they come up as white, it's so it's just understanding what those metrics are and whether they're really the best appropriate ones before they get reported on.
Okay, thanks, Robert. Paul.
I think Robert makes some good points. I think surely the target there should be that we have a representative workforce that mirrors our own population. Because that's really, I think, the way to look at it. I mean, why would we not have that? And if we haven't got that, then we're doing kind of something wrong, all things being equal, aren't we? So that's how I'd approach it. I think these debates we always talk about race and gender. I've actually forgotten how many protected characteristics there are. I think it's 9.
It's 9, yeah.
Yeah. So what about the other 7? Why do we never talk about those?
Yeah.
Because those 2 are massively important, but so are the other ones. What we want is a workforce which is, as I say, is representative of all the different diversity in our communities. So yeah, it'd be good to think about how we bring those other
Bring those on
protected
to the
characteristics in.
forefront as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed. Anyone else? Well, like I said, we are planning to, sort of go ahead with this after taking it to the Midlands Academy Board in January. And it probably wouldn't be immediately, but along the way, we would like to come back out to this group and see if there are any volunteers to work with us on this in a little bit more detail. So, if anyone is interested, then let me know, or sort of further down the line, we'll come back out to this group, and hopefully we can get sort of a subgroup of the I&D ambassadors to work alongside us on this kind of research piece. Okay, so the next thing we wanted to do was basically carrying along with the theme of thinking about the sort of recruitment and also the retention of people from a more diverse background. And like we've just said, that's not just the immediate ones we think of, but it's it's across all of those 9 protected characteristics. Don't want to put anyone on the spot, but we just wanted to take the opportunity to ask you guys if you had any anything you wanted to share that you are aware that your organisation does well in terms of sort of how recruitment is done, or how people are supported to stay within NHS finance and supported in their careers once they do join. And if you, without sort of naming and shaming your organisation, if there's anything you want to feedback that you think could be done better in this area, not just from your organisation but kind of across the board, then that as well. I'm going to put someone on the spot. So Donna, I know that you had a brief chat with Meg about some of the things that your organisation is doing. So I wondered if you wouldn't mind kind of kicking us off with some of the things that you told Meg about, and then if anyone else wants to chip in, they can.
Yeah, no worries, Becky. Thank you.
Thank you.
So a bit like Paul said, and Robert, we're not doing tons. There's loads more we could still be doing. One of the things that's on my to-do list that I never get around to is reviewing JDs and really making the adverts much more fit for purpose. Because we've got sort of 200 staff in the directorate. There's well over 100 JDs. It's just a massive thing that I know is important, but it's that resource and time, isn't it? But we are trying to be a lot wider in terms of the net when we're advertising. So we don't just use NHS jobs. We are using things like LinkedIn, going out to schools, trying to get different age ranges as well, get some youngsters in. We've got someone from the Kickstart programme recently joined us, which is really good. And we're looking at Project Search, which is for neurodiverse individuals, to try and get more recruitment via those routes. And as I say, a big push on apprentices, placement students, stuff like that. And also to keep them, we've got sort of jumps where we've got band 5 and then it goes to band 7 and then it goes to 8B. So the career path isn't great for retention. So we've just developed some roles. We call them development roles. So if you're going out for 7, what we do is we go out for 6 as a 6 development role into a 7 to try and keep staff, and then you've got a bit of a sort of milestones of what they need to achieve, and then they automatically become a 7, and the same at various different grades. So that's been really popular, actually. We've had loads more applications for our development roles than we have for just the normal roles, so they've worked well. What else did I pop down? We always read an EDI statement at the beginning of every interview, irrespective of what grade it is, and that is around for the individual that's being interviewed. It's to remind the panel members of the importance of equality, diversity and inclusion, and a reminder to be mindful of that in the recruitment process, which I think is really good practice. We do exit questionnaires as well, which have been really useful. So when people resign, You've got like your normal HR exit questionnaire, but we've got, I actually do them, and there's sort of 4 or 5 different focus areas where we ask you, why are you leaving? What could we have done to have retained you? And some of those are legit. You know, I've got a job closer to home and it's a promotion, so you know it's a no-brainer. But what I do is the output of that I take into the senior management team, and they discuss, you know, what can we do to address some of these things that are making staff leave. So that's worked really well. And we've got a directorate staff survey that we do every year. So I know we've got the NHS staff survey, but we do one in the directorate, make it quite focused. And one of those is around like induction. How was your induction process? What's our induction document like? Is it useful? What areas of improvement can you get? So trying to get that feedback from new starters is really important. And then we're doing stuff like reverse mentoring, so really pushing that in the senior team. I think that would be really good for some of the senior leaders to be reverse mentored. As Paul said, you know, there's lots of different characteristics that we can all be reverse mentored on. You know, it would apply to all of us. So that's something we're just doing. And we're just creating a leadership training, a compassionate, inclusive leadership training programme that we've worked with the local provider and our apprenticeship levy. So it's funded, so we don't have to pay for it. And I ideally want 200 people in the directorate ultimately doing it. And we've created that. There's some set modules you have to do, but bespoke ones as well. And we've got like EDI modules, and you were talking earlier about difficult conversations. That's one of the modules. Just try and create a more diverse, compassionate team, really. So they were kind of the things that I threw down on a piece of paper when I was talking to Meg, which sounds a lot. Now it sounds like, but it's not. There is tons. There is absolutely tons that we can still be doing. But I think you have to keep chipping away at it, don't you? Because it's just so huge to start with. But yeah, we're making progress.
Can I ask, how does this align in your organisation in terms of everything you talked about? Is that mainly sort of the finance area, or is this being done? Is this kind of organisation wide?
So stuff is being done at organisational level, but we found it quite slow for our directorate, sort of waiting for the HR team, and because they've got tons on, and it's waiting for them. We just kind of thought, we're just going to crack on.
Yeah.
And some of our stuff they've now said,
I was about to say, is that being sort
have
of
a look
back
at
up?
that?
Yeah,
so they and roll it out wider. So
yeah.
We did something on a behaviours charter. So we created that said these are behaviours we want to see and we don't want to see. A lot of that is round being respectful of people with other protected characteristics, bullying, harassment, all of that's in there. And they've actually taken that and are trying to play with that now for organisation wide. So I think my biggest thing is we've realised waiting, you spend a lot of time waiting, so just crack on, and ask for forgiveness afterwards if you've gone off and done something at a tangent to the trust, but we haven't found that yet. So
thank you, Donna. Yeah, I mean, it does sound like you're doing loads, but it's obviously, it sounds like a lot on the list, but like you say, I'm sure there's lots more that you want to be able to do, but it does sound really good, and I hope that was helpful for some others. Robert, you appreciate the comment that you put in the chat. Obviously, yes, you do need to consider the size of the organisation in terms of the sort of things that you should be focusing on and are able to do. So sort of smaller teams compared to bigger trusts are probably going to have different tactics when it kind of comes to the sort of things that you're doing in this area. Paul?
I mean, that was really helpful from Donna, and I suppose as you spoke, Donna, I thought actually, quite a few of those things we are doing, so it made me feel a bit better as well. But it was good to hear you describe that. The thought I was just having, Becky, is this is under the heading of recruitment and retention. So this is probably a question more than anything else, but is it the case, because I think it is, but is it the case that the data shows that we're recruiting reasonably proportionate membership from our community at the kind of the bottom end of the chart, but the problem is more around representation at the more senior levels. That's data I've seen in the past. I wonder if that was true. If it's not true, then clearly we need to do more about recruitment. If it is true, then actually what we need to be doing is focusing on understanding why people aren't progressing at the same rate as their peers. And I mean, I've seen data that shows that, again, it's probably a generalization, but people with protected characteristics tend to be less confident and therefore don't put themselves forward for enhancement. If so, again, it's just about where do we focus our time, really, Becky? If are we focusing on the right thing? And clearly, if there's a recruitment problem, then we need to. But given that time is so tight, where do we focus? Is, I suppose, where I was going with that point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we have, people may well have seen them, but we can recirculate them. So we have the data from the last census that was done in 2022. So we have reports. I think we have a separate one for West Midlands and East Midlands, but we also have a report that's just for the Midlands as a whole in terms of the EDI specific data from that census, which gives us that kind of information, Paul. And I think you're correct in terms of it does show that it's, you know, sort of hitting what we need to hit in terms of the people that we're recruiting in, but there are some sort of flags in terms of the diversity of finance directors and the kind of more senior end. I can't remember off the top of my head exactly what the data says, but I will have a look at it and I will pass it to Becky, those reports to recirculated. Like I said, in terms of this research piece, because that was from 2022, we kind of want to wait for the next round of data from 2024 to be able to look at that. And I think, yeah, in terms of focusing, perhaps it would be more in the, you know, if we're doing this research piece, I would like it to cover both recruitment and retention, but it might be, you know, if we're looking at that data as part of the research pool, it might be more in that kind of conclusions and recommendations part at the end of the report, where we're saying actually for one of the next steps, it's less recruitment and more on the kind of retention and the career paths that, you know, we might get different information out once we do things like the interviews and focus groups, but if that's the sort of message that we're getting from doing the research piece, then maybe that's just like a next step piece of work. So now, you know, how do we focus on the retention part specifically and the career progression, because we're not seeing the diversity of the people coming in going up to kind of leadership level. Has anyone got any other things they might want to share in terms of what their organisation does in terms of kind of how they advertise and recruit or career progression? Hi, Ellie.
Hiya. Just really quickly, I want to say something that AGM have now put into policy. So every single interview on the panel, there has to be somebody from a BAME background. And that's something quite recently that they've put in. We also have a really good, I think I mentioned that in the comments, we have a really good L&D kind of an OD department, and they've got a magazine called, that's online, comes through, it's called Nurture, and it's everything to do with health and well-being and EDI. It's all wrapped around that, and there's always little lunch and learns or little webinars about, you know, recruitment, retention, what are we doing about inclusion, what are we doing about diversity and stuff. So that's, as AGEM stands, they do a really good job, and it's not just finance. So that's, you know, I could maybe share a few things with you later on, Becky, if you wanted.
Please, yeah. So that sounds like something where it's sort of organisation wide, they have, you know, done it quite well, and then it's filtering out to sort of the different areas for you guys to pick up ideas. So yeah, anything you can share on that. Brilliant. Yeah, I mean, just in terms of, you know, it's great to have the people on these calls and on this group to kind of hear information like this. One of the roles of the academy is to be able to share ideas on what people are doing sort of far and wide, not just with people who are signed up to this roles who attend these meetings. So anything anyone can share with us, we can, you know, find ways to share it on the ONF website, you know, through the Midlands Finance Academy, through the newsletters, etc. Has anyone else got sort of anything that their organisation does that they think might be helpful to share? Nope. Okay, well, I will move us on then too. So that was basically it for the agenda. So we have gone through it quite quickly today. There was just one item in terms of AOB that I wanted to raise, and then I'll open up to AOB from anyone else. So I've spoken to Megan from ONF about whether we can get a vice chair for this group. So Sarah obviously wants to continue on as chair, but not always very easy for her kind of diary and her commitments, and obviously wasn't able to chair today in the end. So it would be great to have a sort of a vice chair role, not just to be able to sort of stand in for meetings like this, but also just to work with Sarah and Megan and now, you know, myself from the Academy's perspective on what we cover in these meetings, and the sort of work we're doing and how we're focusing on things going forward. So if anyone is interested in sort of putting themselves forward for the vice chair role, I think Becky, is it best to contact you or Megan?
Yeah.
So contact Becky J or Megan if you'd like to put yourself forward, and yeah, it'd be nice to sort of have someone in the vice chair role. Okay, I won't go around everyone because we've got quite a few people on the call, but just a chance for anyone else to raise anything else in AOB. Robert.
It was only one thing. For those of us that went on the disability conference, they said at the very end that they were going to distribute a survey. Apparently it came out on one of the stalls at the Value Makers conference, but it wasn't kind of widely sent out. I got it because I searched for it and found someone who could send it to me. But given that we've talked about disability and not just focusing on race and and sex, maybe it'd be good to try and get that out via this group as well, to do that survey.
Yeah, I think I have seen that as well. But Becky, can you guys pick that up and get that circulated?
Yeah.
Thank you, Robert. Anything from anyone else under AOB? So I think on the next meeting, we will, from Academy perspective, we'll sort of bring something else that we can look at from our action plan. But I know that Megan is also planning on for each of these meetings, sort of trying to find someone to come and give sort of a very brief presentation on something, a bit like if anyone was on the last meeting that Eleanor did, where she talked about the Breaking Diversity Barriers programme that she took part in, which I thought was a really nice thing to have on the agenda. So, you know, we are planning on the agenda including sort of presentations like that going forward. And we have asked Eleanor to write that up into a blog, which she's done. So we're publishing that soon, and we're going to share that through the Academy, which is really nice. So hopefully we'll have someone sort of presenting on something to do with the EDI from their experience on the next agenda, and we will bring another area of the Academy's EDI plan to have a look at. And if there's anything else that people want covered on these agendas, then please do let us know, either Becky or Megan, or pop it in the chat. Do you know, Becky, when the next meeting is off the top of your head? I'm afraid I don't know.
It's in February sometime. Let me just have a look. Oh, it's the 8th of February.
Okay, 8th of February for the next meeting. So hopefully see many of you there. And thanks everyone for your time today. And I'm loving the Christmas tree in the background, Donna, by the way. It's making me feel very festive. Okay, we'll close there then. Thanks everyone.
Thank you. See you later.
Thanks.
Bye.